Hey, Travis Holmes with the Duval Dive Podcast, BigCatCountry.com, and the Believe Podcast Network here with your Jacksonville Jaguars breaking news. For those of you who maybe you've been at work, maybe you've been out of pocket for a little bit, the Jacksonville Jaguars have signed defensive end Travon Walker to a 4-year, $110 million extension with $77 million in total guarantees coming from Elite Loyalty Sports, his agency, with $50 million fully guaranteed at signing. So Travon Walker is here to stay in Jacksonville. Now, I mean, if you've been listening to the pod, if you've been listening to pretty much anyone in the Jacksonville Jaguars, media space, you probably already expected this move to happen much of this offseason. We knew that it was going to help the Jaguars cap situation. We already knew that the Jacksonville Jaguars, front office loved Travon from every media, opportunity. Every time they had an opportunity to talk about him, they let you know, they raved about the fact that, hey, he puts his body on the line. He puts his, he puts himself in harm's way dealing with the injuries in 2025, and they were not going to allow that to hurt him, in negotiations. James Gladstone basically said the same thing at his end of season presser. So that's basically what you're looking at that point. Like, Jimmy Stones is obviously putting in the work. He's obviously in there making these moves. That we thought this contract would end up being something around that $25 million range, and you end up landing in that same general area, at least, because Travon did deal with two injuries in this past 2025 season. He had the early season wrist injury in week 4, and that's what resulted in his mid-season surgery on his left wrist. And then he later had the issue. I believe that was week 11 that forced him to miss the Titans game and the Cardinals game. So he was basically only really healthy for the first 3 weeks of the season. For anyone who maybe is not a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars fan base and you're wondering why this contract, why those numbers, you're looking at a guy who was basically hobbled, within, again, the fourth week, starting at the fourth week of the season, and with multiple, reasonably serious injuries at that point. That's going to result in a little bit of a reduction in his sacks. That's going to result in a little bit of a reduction in his pressures on the season. But if you're looking at him across his career, I mean, he started off with the 3.5 sack season back in the 2022 year when, the Jaguars had a little bit more of a pass rush. And then you see him, that the arrow points up, 10 sack season in 2023. 10.5 sacks season in 2024. And in both of those seasons, he played every game. So again, you're looking at a guy who generally hasn't had a health issues. As far as that piece is concerned, it's just 2025 was an unlucky season for him as far as the injuries are concerned. So maybe that helps the Jaguars get a little bit of a discount. I mean, that's what Daniel Kilkenny's saying, under $30 million. That's the deal for the Jaguars. I mean, that's what Social Alky is kind of talking about, team discount. Looking good out there, TW. Like, I agree. That's basically what you're looking at. Like, it is a very good situation for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't think that part's very much arguable. You have a few trolls out there or a few people out there who may be not a part of the Jacksonville Jaguars fan base who may have their opinions, and that's always going to happen. I mean, trolls exist for a reason. But when you're looking at the numbers, it's a $27.5 million, average per year overall. So that will slot Travon Walker around that 12th, around being the 12th edge rusher in the NFL. I mean, you're looking at right behind Josh Hines-Allen, right behind Brian Burns, right behind Trey Hendrickson, and a tick above Nick Bonito out in Denver. Like, that's a really good situation. That's a really good placement for him because, again, he's still behind Josh Hines-Allen. So I know Hines could be in the locker room and, rip him about the fact that he's not there yet. And I think that's actually very appropriate, especially when you got the CBA conversations coming up. That's the part I haven't heard much of yet. I've listened to a few people just talk about these contract negotiations, but I thought the biggest part of this conversation is the fact that now Travon again gets to hit the market at around age 30, right as that salary cap jumps up with the new CBA negotiations that's set to take place around the 2030 season. So that's kind of where everybody's sort of right now expecting the salary cap to explode following that season. So you kind of have to think he's going to get paid again, if that makes sense. So yeah, a PT Preston, here we go. Great value, in my opinion. Big reason we had the best run D in the league. Talent still growing. Amen. I think I actually agree with you. I got these stats here somewhere. I might get into them in a second. in my notes. But yeah, I mean, I think a few people have already commented on the fact that this is very much a team friendly deal for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think it is. Like when you look at what other edge rushers are making in the NFL, and then you're looking at this contract, I don't think it's like he may not be at the level of those guys, like an Aiden Hutchinson, like Myles Garrett, like a Max Crosby, and that's okay. Neither is Josh Hines Allen, neither are most of the guys in the NFL, but he's also not making 45, 48 million dollars on average per year. It's not guaranteed money in the 150, 140, 130 million dollar like range. You're talking 77 million dollars guaranteed at signing. You know, again, 27.5 million dollars per year. I think that's actually a very reasonable contract with a growing salary cap. And it also allows Jacksonville a little flexibility, allows them to open up around $11 million in salary cap space per the early reports before the signing took place. So now Jacksonville was before the signing projected to have $23 million in cap space. That's for the 2027 season. That was per contract before the signing. So as it currently stands, with knowing this is going to be an extension on the back end of the contract, you kind of know that they're going to have to do some kind of accounting with the numbers to kind of make that fit for the future years. Maybe they're going to backload it. Maybe they're going to add void years. We don't know. The contract numbers aren't out yet. I'm not trying to speculate on it because there's so many options of what they could do. But also the big thing, Travon Walker, he signed for this rate, less than the 30 million. And I think most reasonable people out there can probably say he could have made the argument and actually pushed to bet on himself, because I thought that might be potentially what he could do. I mean, that's what Josh Hines Allen did. He bet on himself and ended up getting paid because of it. So yeah, Greg Cross says it's a discount and positive, but his motor needs a tune up. I'm not even sure what that means, but social accurate right on time. But yes, PT, compared to some of those $40 million cap hits, this is obviously great news. And yes, and he's young enough to be able to get a third contract out of this, but by the time that everyone is said and done. But yeah, so overall, so for him to sign at this rate, when we know he already had multiple seasons with back-to-back 10 sack seasons, like it works out in the Jaguars' favor, obviously. So from that angle in negotiations, you can now get a guy for maybe just slightly a little bit less because you have at least the ability to argue that in negotiations. And from Travon's stance, obviously, if he wanted to make this difficult, he probably could have. So obviously he wants to be in Jacksonville, and obviously the team wanted to get it done. So shout out to all parties for being adults at the table and kind of just making it work out. But I still think this is absolutely and undoubtedly a steal for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I do say the word steal, knowing that we're still talking about 27.5 US millions of dollars, because Walker had a quote unquote down year, and he still had a pass rush win rate of like 10.5 this season. And in late December, again, dealing with that knee injury that he had starting in week 11, he still had a 10.2 run stop win rate at that time. So like, he's not just dominant in the passing game and vicious in the passing game, but he's also a big part of what helps the Jacksonville Jaguars have that number one run stopping, defense. So like, that is something that needs to be taken into the consideration, despite the fact that run stopping generally goes under the radar, because it's the pass game, it's the sacks, it's the pressures, it's all of that. That's what normally gets guys paid, unfortunately, and we just kind of know that's what it is. But he struggled staying healthy and still put up reasonably solid metrics in the pass rush. Those sacks kind of remain low. He did have 3.5 on the season, but he also had a wrist issue that results in you not being able to grab guys, and that's kind of a big part of your game when you're a speed to power guy. Because I mean, that's what he does. He's manhandling dudes and moving them out the way. We talked about this on multiple film sessions throughout this past 2025 season. But let me get to what you guys are talking about, because you guys are on fire right now in the comments. But Radius asks, where does this stack the Jags in terms of salary cap invested in their starting edges? Because we've got to see the sack numbers rising to justify that going forward. And I actually think that's reasonable. That's a very fair take. I actually think I said something moderately similar at the end of the season when we started having this conversation about Travon being extended. It's not, but that's less of a conversation about Travon specifically, just to be real about this. And very much so feels like more of a conversation when you're talking about Josh Hines Allen because he's older. That's just kind of how that works. Like you're going to eventually try to figure out what your succession plan looks like. Whereas Travon is younger, and you have to believe that the arrow is pointing up. But yeah, they gotta figure out something as far as the draft is concerned. They got to figure out something as far as that succession plan for Eric Armstead, and also what's going to happen behind Devon Hamilton, and just to allow them another pass rusher on the inside. But yeah, Greg says, I want more elite, but he's very good. I mean, yeah, he's dang good. And I think that that's fair for someone playing defensive end who also hasn't had many opportunities to kind of be flexible like those Aiden Hutchinsons, like Max Crosby, when they actually move these guys inside. That hasn't happened for the Jaguars until last year under Anthony Campanelli's defense. Like that's my personal opinion of it. Like we just hadn't seen that very much. And I think very many people in the fan base and both in the media have asked for that for a very long time. So I think, yeah, I actually think that is probably a bad take by Greg. But hey, man, I'm willing to at least give you an argument if I think you're not trying to be a troll and like being reasonable about the conversation surrounding who he is versus who he ain't, because I think that's actually very fair. But overall, man, the deal has been inspected all offseason, so it obviously doesn't impact the Jacksonville Jaguars draft plans that much, other than to say that they obviously got to do something better at defensive tackle. They obviously got to do something more at the defensive end piece to kind of help the outside pass rush, and that then allows Travon Walker more chances, more snaps, more pass rush opportunities on the line to kind of get those favorable matchups inside on those guards, because that's how, honestly, from my perspective, in the 2023 season, Aiden Hutchinson racked up on a lot of his sacks because they move him into those less mobile guards on those passing downs, and that then allowed the Lions to kind of get those favorable matchups, because Liam Cohen said it last season. It's harder to double team a guy on the inside if they have even a reasonable threat on the other side. So the Jaguars are in a favorable situation like that. You've got Josh Hines Allen on one side. You can chip to the outside. It's a lot easier. It's a lot harder to have for every team to have a LaQuint Allen and still be able to chip going inside and to be able to scheme that up over and over and over. So that then allows Travon Walker to get more sacks, and it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just helps the team across the board. So, but yeah, I mean, that's basically what you're looking at. So like, this is something that Jaguars fans have been kind of itching for since they lost Arden Key as that third Jaguars, edge rusher. So they need to invest in edge still. They need to invest at, another defensive tackle still. We already know that. But at the end of the day, it's a favorable situation for the Jaguars. You get the guy extended who you wanted in the house, the way that he operates, the way that he works. But also the gauntlet has been thrown. And we actually going to talk about this tomorrow morning in the pre-recorded, episode from, that came out earlier today. If you're a member of the Duval on the YouTube side, you've already heard the podcast. It just drops tomorrow morning. But it's the quote from the owners meeting from Liam Cohen talking about how he wants Travon Walker to have Aaron Donald-like traits. So that's the gauntlet that has been thrown. He wants to throw him out. Hey, I got to throw you out of practice just to be able to get some yards, because I need you dominating to that level. I need you to act like this 10-time All-Pro, this 10-time Pro Bowl, 3-time All-Pro Defensive Player of the Year. Like, that's what I need from you. So, like, obviously, Cohen knows that they were negotiating at the time. Cohen knows this is about to happen, but he's letting him know this is the standard. I'm not accepting anything less. I need those kind of practice habits, those kind of workout habits. I need all of that from you, because that is what I need for us to be successful, and for you, Travon Walker, to also be successful. So yeah, we already looked at the numbers. Overall, the Jaguars essentially just guaranteed much of the first 3 years of Travon Walker's contract, and that's for a guy who consistently puts up 10 sacks per season when not injured with a wrist injury. So he couldn't have the biggest part of his game. I think that's actually a reasonably fair contract overall. And I think the Jags end up getting a pretty significant deal on the amount per year when you're looking at the recent contracts from his peers, like we just looked at a second ago. So those are generally just my thoughts. I'm curious about the rest of y'all's, because, like, what do y'all think about the contract? Like, was that a little too much? Was it a little too early? I mean, do you think he should have just waited another season? Because I'm also of the belief that if they waited, the price, yesterday's price ain't tomorrow's price. Y'all know about the price of bread. Y'all know about inflation. So what it was ain't necessarily going to be what it is. But at the same time, injuries do happen, and he has been moderately, healthy throughout his career. So I'm just kind of curious of what y'all thoughts. Like in the comments, I see you guys going back and forth a little bit. Florida May Topper says, channel member Florida May Topper says the last two Super Bowl winners have a great duo at defensive tackle. Yeah, I mean, the Jaguars absolutely do need that. Greg Cross says production is key. I mean, and that's fair also. And the PT Preston says the Jaguars need waves of edges instead of couple of elite. I mean, the fact that he's even talking about the fact that they could be elite still says something. Top of Eagles had Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter. Seahawks had Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy. I think that's a fair point. We kind of talked about that a few weeks back. And Radius says a Travon Walker size Aaron Donald is a terrifying idea. Oh wow! I mean, that is. I mean, yeah, he may not have the length, he may not have the strength, but having the workout habits, having the practice habits, and the game habits is still a thing. And again, we're going to talk about that tomorrow morning in the Duval Dive pre-recorded pod. Again, if you're a channel member, you've already heard it because you're in the family. And if you're not a channel member, come in, click that button. Help us out. Cody Jackson says, does that mean they're going to move on from Josh Hines Allen? Woo. That's a hard one, bro. Because everybody eventually, like, if you're not the quarterback and if you're not like the guys, like, it's going to have to be a small number of people. I mean, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, for instance, how often they move on from people. Look at the Eagles, even how often they move on from guys. It's just if you're not in that 2-3 guys circle, it's quite possible. Like, I'm not going to say that the Jaguars are necessarily going to, because I don't see that happening this year. And realistically, it may not even happen next year. Just looking at how this contract is wrapped up and the fact that he is a leader in that locker room and just the way that he gets down is something that they do love and they do cherish in that room. But eventually it will get to a point where you have a succession plan if you have enough depth that maybe they could. And that's where this thing gets kind of squirrely. But I don't think you have to worry about that this year or maybe not even next year in talking about Josh Hines Allen. Topa thinks Josh Hines Allen's going to be traded soon. They're going to be eating a boatload of that contract. It'd be interesting for sure. But yeah, Radius, I agree with you, bro. It's a great value, and he's delighted that they got it done. And I think that's pretty much, what it is. Like, I also do agree with you, Social Alky, that Josh Hines Allen is unlikely to get a third contract. And Duval, third contract, cool. That makes total sense. I mean, you're talking about him being plus 30 at that point. Yeah, cool. I don't think that's a weird thing or an odd thing to say. But also, and I don't know if any of you all checked out Jesus Topa, Mr. Ake's sacks this season needs to be better. I think anybody would say you want your guys to be better, but also a big part of sacks is being able to have that interior push. And they only got that for the first 6 games of the season last year. And after Eric Armstead got hurt, there was no pass rush interior pressure at that point for the rest of the season. Devon Hamilton wasn't giving you much, but that's also not his game, and they just didn't have a third guy. So I'm not necessarily going to put that all on the edges. I think that's a reasonable conversation for us to have, but we looked at the tape in many weeks in this podcast, so you guys kind of know how I feel about that. It's a chicken or egg conversation. Do you need a fourth guy? I don't know, but you're also going to have 2 defensive ends who are both being paid as top 15 edges in the NFL right now. So eventually it will become a conversation to put up or shut up. Like, I do understand that too. Like, you're getting paid that much to get the sacks. You're going to also then be judged based on that contract saying you got to get the sacks. D lineman being there or not, like, you got to figure it out. So I get the argument on all sides, but at the end of the day, you know what this is. The Jaguars need that interior help, and hopefully they get it in the draft this year. Yeah. But that's exactly where we're looking at overall, man. So you guys, let us know if you have any other comments. Let us know if you're listening to on the YouTube side. Hey, help us out. Click that like button. Comments on the stream. If you're listening to us on the audio side, would believe obviously rate and review us. It helps us out tremendously, and it costs you nothing. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow morning, Saturday, where we have this secondary podcast. Again, it was pre-recorded, so we will talk about the Aaron Donald quote in a lot more details and all the other outcomes of the NFL owners meeting, all the stuff that you guys might have heard a little bit about, but you didn't think about because they told us a lot. I mean, Cohen had a 40-minute interview. I mean, they talked to us a lot about stuff that's happening, and I don't hear anybody really talking about a lot of these things. And I think we should. So lock it in, man, and let us know. But Duval, We love y'all. Later.